Go.
Go. Bird.
Greetings, cardboard architects, and welcome to another episode of Command Tower. In this video, we've got some 3-player commander action for you. We've got Dan piloting Vish Kal against Nick rocking Gaddock Teeg, and I'm playing my Derevi deck. I'll give you a quick intro on what's going on with these decks before we start the gameplay. Dan's Vish Kal deck is an Orzhov deck that is based around an Orzhov popular mechanic, which is to say draining life. His plan is to negate what his opponents are doing with board wipes like Wrath of God, and then the next stage he's going to start to squeeze the life out of you like a boa constrictor with cards like Pillory of the Sleepless and different extort cards as well. So that's kind of Dan's game plan, is to, as the name of his deck indicates, death by 1,000 cuts. Nick's rocking a Gaddock Teeg deck. This is kind of what I would characterize as a Selesnya mid-range deck. It doesn't have any particular strong theme in it, but it just plays kind of the best green and white creatures there are. Lots of utility stuff, ways to destroy different types of permanents. As you know, green's very good at this. So let's see what Nick can cook up for us. Finally, we've got myself playing my Derevi deck. This deck is based entirely around the card Merfolk Looter. If you want to hear more about this deck, and I mean a lot more about this deck, go check out Command Tower episode 12 and you can get the full rundown and blueprint on what's going on with this puppy. I've spent a lot of time streamlining it in the last few months, and I'm pretty proud of this sucker. So go check it out. We're trying to fill up that graveyard, draw cards, discard cards, get benefits when we do any of those things, toss a Vengevine, toss some flashback spells. Let's begin, shall we?
Dan commenced with vizkopa guildmage, reassembling skeleton, dusk urchins, treasury thrall, consume spirit, and 2 swamps.
Nick began with a benalish emissary, sanctum guardian. He got a solemn simulacrum, one of them season marshals. He got a thicket elemental and a forest and a plains up in here. Y'all, Matthew kicked off this rodeo with the tracker's instinct, circular logic, cephalid looter, a seedborn muse, sun petal grove, a forest, and an island. Here's the opening tip, and Nick's going to start us off with a forest. I'm going to follow suit with another forest, but upgrade on his with my full art fancy Zendikar land. Dan's got a command tower, trumping us both and gaining command of all 5 colors. Nick's going to spit out Gaddock Teeg nice and early. Gaddock Teeg's going to be a bit of a problem for Dan in this game, who has many heavy cost non-creature spells. I'm going to dip into a Tracker's Instinct, see what we can find here. We dig up a couple creatures, it looks like. We're going to take the Burnished Hart. I think you'll agree this is a good choice early in the game because we want to be ramping up now. Dan will come down to the Land of the Mortals and play a basic land. Out comes a vizkopa guildmage. A simple 2/2 may do a little damage in the early game, but you know that we're looking at those 2 abilities as the real meat of this card. That second ability, especially in Commander, can drain a bunch of life. Nick's going to ramp up, just like I soon will be with my Burnished Hart, with Kodama's Reach. He's going to dig up a pair of Plains cards. So he says I'm pretty well set on green mana. I'm going to go for a pair of whites. And he comes in at me with Gaddock Teeg. First blood is dealt by Gaddock Teeg, and I'm going to take 2 commander damage here. Whether that will be an issue going forward remains to be seen. Nick's playing green. Now I don't know if he has pump spells or other ways to make Gaddock Teeg bigger, but we'll see if that becomes a danger or not. Cephalid Looter comes out for me. Very nearly the namesake of the deck. Very similar to Merfolk Looter, difference being we can target our opponents with this card. Now Dan brings out Dusk Urchins. This card I really like. I just like the art on it. I like the way it's designed. I think it's a nice card draw option for black. And benalish Emmisary comes down. And Nick's going to blow up my Sun Petal Grove. Wow, that hurts. We'll see if we can dig up another white mana source, because that certainly hurt. Gaddock's going to slip by the Looter and deal us another 2 commander damage. So the Burnished Hart comes down. Ah, yes, we can get right by our color mana issues, assuming this Burnished Hart can stick around. Then we can get our white mana source so that we can If nothing else, cast Derevi, right? Dan's gonna hint at what's coming. He swings in with his dusk urchins, and it looks like he's got some mysterious play going on with his vizkopa guildmage. The urchins will connect, and as indicated, Dan's gonna use that ability on the vizkopa guildmage to give his dusk urchins lifelink. So he's gonna jump up to 43. And Nick is going to continue the ramp train here with a solemn simulacrum. So first kodama's reached, now the sad robot. He's going to be ramping up into, what would this be, his 7th land. So Nick's doing really well on mana here. In comes Gaddock again. Boy, he's just chipping away, piece by piece. I'm up to 6 commander damage already. And I've already lost 75% of my life, so... Not irrelevant, these small chunks of life. They're starting to add up. Down comes a tranquil thicket for me. I say I'd rather get a land drop out there than try to cycle this card. And Dan comes in at me with his dusk urchins again. It'll shrink down, nearing its death, but nearing Dan's extra card draw. So it will connect and drop me down to 29. Nick draws his card for the turn. He's going to drop another forest, and he's got a something big coming out here. Thicket Elemental. And he pays the kicker cost. So that'll be a total of 7 mana. And he's going to flip cards. There it is, right the very top card is going to come into play. He's got a core aeronaut. Unfortunately, he won't be able to use that kicker ability since it just came directly into play. But he does earn a nice 2/2 flyer off of that. So Nick's creatures are starting to add up. He's getting a bit of a board presence going. And this is something that I should have taken note of. You know, this army is starting to mount, so I need to be aware of my life total. So Burnished Hart is going to jump in front of Gaddock Teeg. Say, get off my nuts, Gaddock Teeg. With this commander damage, Burnished Hart jumps in front and then jumps to the graveyard to get me those lands into play. So now we're kind of joining the Nick train here with the ramp party. Up to 7 mana with our Evolving Wilds. The Looter will activate. Looks like we picked up a lore scale Codal there. And down comes Seedborn Muse. So Seedborn Muse has a ton of synergy with the looters in this deck. And you see I've got one out there now, so this is a really great situation because I get to activate my looter 2 more times around now. Dan's going to swing in with his dusk urchins and it just bites the dust. So Dan's going to get that extra card draw. See, my creature died, but hey, I got all these extra cards off it. I dealt a little damage, and this is what I'm talking about with the dusk urchins. It's a cool card draw option for black that also gives you a body. Liliana Vest comes down for Dan. And I believe he used the, correct me if I'm wrong here, and I apologize if I messed this part up, but I think Dan just used the +1 ability to have probably me discard a card. And out comes Derevi at the end of the turn. Another nice way to take advantage of Seedborn Muse mana on your opponent's turn is to bring in Derevi at instant speed. Especially if you're dealing with other big flyers, especially like Prosh, or the Red-White Angel Girl. Dealing with creatures like this, Derevi can easily block and then be recast on your opponent's turn, tapping something down and blocking their biggest creature over and over again. So Nick's going to chase after me again with his Thicket Elemental and his core Aeronaut. I'm going to block the Solemn Simulacrum, say fine, draw your card. I just need to protect my life total. And this is what I was talking about. We need to be aware of our life total. We've dropped all the way down to 27. And now that takes us down to 21. So we're not in the red zone yet, but we have to be protective. We have to be protective. Nick's got a Sanctum Guardian, which can prevent a big attack from, one giant creature. Something that comes to mind is Bonehorde in my deck, an equipment that scales to creatures in graveyards which can turn one creature into a giant monster. The Sanctum Guardian would be great for stopping one of those. Now I've got a command tower, so my colored mana is just looking wonderful. We're up to 7 mana now. We're gonna flashback Tracker's Instinct here.
So why did I choose Stoneforge Mystic off the Tracker's Instinct? Well, right off the bat, we can eliminate the 2 land cards, which leaves us with just the 2 creatures. Now, Pulse Mage Advocate, while a good card, is one that I usually prefer to cast later in the game. I like when the graveyard zones fill up a bit more, that way I have more targets from my own graveyard to choose from to bring back. And also my opponents are filling up their graveyards with weaker cards such as fetch lands that I can return to their hand with the Pulse Mage and not worry about them gaining too much card advantage off his ability. So that leaves us with just the Stoneforge Mystic, which was my pick. I'll also say that I picked the Stoneforge Mystic because I know that it can search up Bonehorde in particular. I'm really starting to fill up my graveyard zone with Cephalid Looter in concert with the Seedborn Muse ability. So rather than go for another ability doubler in Illusionist Bracers, I went for Bonehorde because I'm trying to close out the game now.
So I don't know what I'm doing, messing around with my lands. But, okay, still my turn. We're going to bring out Illusionist Bracers and pop that bad boy on Cephalid Looter. So I'm really glad that this happened in this game because this is a wonderful example of the kind of synergy you can get going. Between Seedborn Muse untapping this Looter every turn and the Bracers doubling the ability, we have the ability to draw and discard 6 cards per round. And I'm talking about drawing all these cards. Dan's bringing out an Underworld Dreams. So yes, absolutely, right away in response to that, I'm going to get my double loot out of the way so that I don't take more pinging damage. This stuff is starting to add up. But wow, that's quite a nice answer to my little Cephalid Broker combination here. Kind of the last thing that this deck wants to see is attacks every time we draw a card. So Nick goes on to his turn. He's still hitting his land drop, so this is good. He comes after me with his Thicket Elemental and Gaddock. We'll see how I choose to block here. I've got some options. Of course, just blocking with Derevi and then recasting him at the end of the turn is no problem whatsoever. Trying to decide where to put the Derevi. We're gonna step in front of the Elemental. I said we have to be careful of our life total, so we're gonna block the larger creature and keep our life total a little healthier, albeit take a little more commander damage. Additionally, as I mentioned before, this is a good example of it. I took the Gaddock Teeg damage because I want Gaddock Teeg to stay alive, because I know that it is a thorn in the side of Dan's deck. As Nick brings out Seasoned Marshal and this big Sabertooth creature. So Nick is really starting to look fierce. Derevi comes back down at the end of Nick's turn. So it looks like we activated the Broker again, took a little damage, and we tapped down the vizkopa guildmage with Derevi. And here comes a Cyclonic Rift. So this will be a game changer. Yep, all of Nick's creature army is going to be just whisked away. Yeah, that's what it does. Oh, we're discussing Cyclonic Rift's interaction with Gaddock Teeg, and determined that Gaddock Teeg just looks right at the mana cost at the top right of the card. He doesn't care about an alternate cost such as overload. So I chase in at Dan for 4 damage, including 2 commander here. It finally looks like I can go on the offensive a little bit, at least for now, while the board's been bounced away. Oh, there, we get a nice pull off the broker with a spitting image, dumping that into the graveyard. So that'll give us the option to do some flashback cloning stuff later. And here comes the Stoneforge Mystic we searched up earlier with Tracker's Instinct. So as I alluded to, we are going to search up Bonehorde. So at this point in the game, my graveyard's getting pretty sizable because of that Seedborn, Illusionist Bracer, Looter combo. It's filling up pretty fast. The board's clear at the moment, and what I'm trying to say is that I'm going in for the kill at this point. I'm turning my attention away from myself and moving it onto my opponents. Dan's going to try to wipe the board with a Day of Judgment, but I am going to counter it and just dash his hopes with a Circular Logic. So Dan just brings out a reassembling skeleton. So my plan at this point is to turn my eyes to the opposite side of the board, since I don't have to worry so much about protecting myself anymore. And because my graveyard's getting pretty big, I can try to go in for the kill with Derevi by strapping a Bonehorde on him. So unfortunately, Nick's going to get a little more added card advantage from the Cyclonic Rift. But who am I kidding? It's just horrible all around when that happens. Nick will earn a Valor off of his Wood Elemental, or Thicket Elemental. So if that creature ever ends up dying, his whole squad's going to be really, really good in combat. And the Sanctum Guardian comes back down again. A potential thorn to my game plan at this point, which is, like I said, making that really big Derevi. As Courser of Crewfix and Secure Tribe-Elder hit the bin, keep dumping those creatures in there. That's what we want to see. Bonehorde comes out. Looks like we got 6 mana tapped, so we're going to immediately sacrifice. Not sacrifice, but we're going to equip to Derevi, and that Germ Token's going to go away. Which is sad, because he was so cute. I'm deciding who to smash in with. Who to smash in at. So maybe we're going to keep... Yep, we're going to keep everybody home except for Derevi. Derevi's going to chase after Dan here. So Dan clearly has no flying blockers to deal with this massive Derevi. His options are looking pretty thin. Oh, and Nick's going to sacrifice his Sanctum Guardian to protect Dan. So Derevi is not going to get through any damage.
So why did Nick sacrifice his Sanctum Guardian to save Dan's hide? Well, after conferring with Dan, they agreed that it would be better to keep Dan around just because of how many Wraths he has in his deck, and given the fact that my creature-based deck is getting a little out of hand at this point.
So that is the end of my turn. We proceed on to Dan's turn, and I untap all my stuff once more. Miri the Cursed comes out, followed by a vizkopa guildmage again. So Miri, an interesting aggressive option for Dan. Not very characteristic of his deck, but hey, you got to deal damage somehow. Nick brings out his benalish emissary again. Say we've done this routine before. You're going to blow up another one of my lands? As he takes out the command tower. In-swing a Thicket Elemental and a Valor. Both are going to die a horrible death to my oversized blockers. And down comes Thrun the Last Troll. And Nick taps out his available regeneration mana in order to spit out a core outfitter, willing to let his shields down just for a turn to get an extra creature out there. So we are... Okay, we have a Genesis in our graveyard, and we're going to activate his ability at the start of our upkeep. We're going to dig up a dauntless escort. So the idea there is that we have our game plan in play, which is to say Bonehard on Derevi. This is how we're trying to win the game at this point. So dauntless escort is what we want to go for because we just want to protect that. And Derevi's going to swing in at Nick. And that's good night. There's enough creatures in those graveyards to deal Nick a full lethal 21 plus damage. So now we're on to Dan's turn again. Let's see if he can cook up anything to deal with my mounting board presence. I mean, I've got my win condition out there, but I've got a whole lot more than that, adding a big splinter fright to the board. And that's exactly why I search for the dauntless escort. Dan goes for a hex there, but I stop it by making all my creatures indestructible. We're going to keep the looter thing going. We're going to mill. Yeah, it looks like we're milling at this point. We don't have a hand size. Oh, maybe we do. Maybe that milling was splinter fright happening at the start. My mistake. So there's the best card in Commander on the top of our graveyard. Definitely where my opponents want to see it. We continue to loot. See, we add at least another creature to the graveyard. Pumping up our Splinter Fright and our Bone Horde equipment. Derevi comes in after Dan. He can chump block this turn, but things are looking pretty grim. Oh, we're counting up creatures in graveyards. And Dan's going to drop from 39 all the way down to 16. So, although he takes care of the Derevi, he still takes a heap from the Splinter Fright. So out comes Dan's commander at long last. A flying lifelink. Again, this can hold off Derevi for a turn, but the fact he's playing Vish Kal and not a board wipe to at least get rid of that Dauntless Escort is indicative that he's SOL at this point. Dan's taking a peek at some of my cards. He says, do you have me? Do you have me dead? Am I just dead? Is that what's going on here? He's looking at this interaction, that interaction. How big's the Bone Horde? How big's the Splinter Fright? Dan's going to pack it in, as I can deal him lethal damage probably in 2 turns, but Dan scoops it up there. So thanks for watching this game. Thanks for sticking around and watching this Commander match with me. I had a lot of fun playing in this game. I had fun doing the commentary here for you. So if you want more cool Commander content, you can head over to Facebook. We're at facebook.com/DodoBirdCommander. We've got more stuff than just videos. We've got some cool, insane gameplay pictures that I'll show you over there. Different stuff. Check it out, what's happening around the internet with Commander. Thanks a lot for watching.